if the role of the leader is not to be, the innovation driver, then who is? And so I always thought that this mindset of we have to always be better and we need to challenge ourselves to always be better and always trying to instill that in our teams. So this forward thinking, I'm not just myopically focused on, today or tomorrow or getting the audit plan done necessarily. I am very focused on even further out and driving us towards better.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Audit Podcast. I'm your host, Trent Russell. Today on the show, we have retired CAE Dell Jeans. Dell was formerly the General Auditor, or CAE, at Truist. He was there for 34 years, which is super impressive. He's currently the principal at Jeans Professional Development, where he coaches internal audit, risk management, and finance professionals. So if you need a coach, you probably do. If you need a coach, Dell is a fantastic person to talk to. I know just in the conversations that we had kind of off the air, Dell asked me a couple of questions, and distinctly remember one of them thinking, yeah, that's a coaching question, because it kind of made me sweat a little bit and I had to think about it. And so Dell's been fantastic. He was highly recommended from one of our former guests, Margie Bastola. When she found out what we were doing, she said, you got to talk to Dell. He's fantastic. Dell also introduced me to a future guest that I'll mention during that person's episode, but who was also great. So we have this whole string of really, really good referrals. But part of this retired CAE series, hoping to get maybe a little bit more transparency from the retired CAE, since they aren't part of their organizations anymore. Not that we feel like we don't get that from the CAEs that we talk to now, but nonetheless, that was really the goal, and to really learn from them. I think anytime you can take a step back, take a break. I know whenever I take 2 weeks off every year, when I come back, it's like completely different. Mindset's different. There's more clarity. I have more of an understanding of what I actually want to do, goals, objectives, things like that. And so, considering most of these retired CAs have been like that for a couple of years, we thought it'd be really good to get their perspective. So with that, some of the things that we talked to Dell about as a retired CAE turned coach. Coach us up. Give us some practical takeaways. We also want to know, a pretty standard question we asked everyone was, if a new CAE asked for a politics lesson that maybe you've never put on the record while you're on the job, what story would you tell them? I think politics is something we don't really hear enough about, the politics of being a CAE. So we're trying to uncover that a little bit more, help everybody understand what it really means to be a CAE from that perspective. And then lastly, we close with, if Dell was going to write a book about his career today, what would the first chapter be about? And then what would the last chapter be about? With that said, here we go. Hey everybody, before we go to the show, quick announcement. On September 24th and 25th, 2025, we'll be having the Audit Analytics and AI Conference. So block your calendars. It's going to be between 9 and 4 Central. That's 9 and 4 Chicago time. So again, that's September 24th and 25th. If you're in your car right now, probably want to pull over, go ahead and put that in your calendar, save the date there. More to come from us, but want to let you know, save the date, September 24th, September 25th, 9 to 4 Central. So what is in either your internet browsing history or your ChatGPT history, anything like that, anything professional or personal, just something to kind of let the audience kind of know who you are?
Yeah, thanks. Well, first, thanks for having me today, Trent, as well, and really appreciate being with you. Yeah, ChatGPT. I mean, I have really discovered this tool in the past, I don't know, 6, 8 months, and I've tried to be a active user because I feel like I have always felt my entire life trying new things and trying new technologies and all that, while not on the cutting edge, I think is important for people to do. Keeps you fresh. Um, so on ChatGPT, I have used it a lot actually for idea development for some of the coursework that I'm putting together. It helps me. It does a really nice job with case studies when I need to write those. It's almost like I treat it like an intern or a personal assistant, and I say, here's kind of what I need it to be, and then it does the first draft, and then I certainly own it and edit it and make it my own. And so I find that to be very, very helpful. So there's a blend of kind of that kind of research that I put in there. Sometimes I'll just ask it questions like, "What is something?" And then often as well, I use it for travel itineraries. My wife and I are taking a trip here coming up, and I said, "Let's just see what it'll do." And I popped in, screenshots of the 5 hotels we're staying in over 2 weeks, and I said, "Just to make me an itinerary, include distances between locations, include, um, where I might recommend I, sightsee or dine or whatever," and, came back with the most beautiful plan that you've ever seen, and, again, it would not be my final plan, but it gets me started, and I think, having been through a career of having, large teams and lots of people around you and working with you, and I was in constant edit and review mode, it kinda puts me back in that edit and review mode, which is kinda fun.
Yeah, definitely better than the have to do all the detail work, mode. I like the so you took the screenshots of the hotels and uploaded those, so I'm assuming it was obvious enough there was, like, naming on there or something like that as opposed to
Yeah, so screenshot of the hotel reservation. So, "Hey, you just booked your reservation. Here's your confirmation code. Here's your
got it.
dates. Here's what the hotel is." That's all it had on it, right?
Okay,
And then
yeah,
I just so do all I uploaded all those in, and then it came back with and I didn't tell it anything about it. It came back with the itinerary based on that, and it knew the order, because I told it what order we'd be going to the differences, and, yeah, it was sweet. It's cool.
okay.
So, yeah.
Did it come back and be like, "Hey, don't do this, just take a cruise?"
No, I do find that ChatGPT never really gives you any negative, feedback. It's always pretty positive about whatever you say, and so and so it was like, "Oh, great plan, Dale."
Yeah.
You
There's
know?
actually something I read today, and it was titled, like, "ChatGPT is acting weird," or something like that, and it was basically, they have made some change that it's too agreeable, and so there's tweaks going on behind the scenes is what I think OpenAI said, like, "Yeah, we recognize it, we're gonna make a change," or something like that, but, it was almost too agreeable, which I thought was interesting. Like, to close this out, where are you going? Where's the trip?
"Oh, we're going out west."
Okay.
So, yeah, and I guess by the time this airs, we'll be back, but, going out west for a couple weeks, and, yeah, we've never done some national parks out that way, so we're looking forward to all that, and should be a beautiful time of the year, and so, yeah, thanks for asking.
Well, if you listen to this after you've gotten back, I hope you had a great trip.
Thank you, sir. I
You
appreciate
got it.
it.
Hey, everybody, we're going to take a quick break from our guests. And if you need to get analytics or AI actually working in your internal audit department, or if you already have some of it, you feel like you're not really getting exactly what you need out of it, you know there's more, and you're not getting that, go to the show notes, look for the Green Skies Analytics link, click it. On the website, there'll be other links that you can click that'll take you directly to a calendar to schedule time. It's literally 3 clicks to get the time scheduled, to get it figured out. All right, back to the show. All right, so you are part of our retired CAE series, and you definitely haven't retired and then just traveled. You stayed active, you stayed working, you've turned into a coach, and so coach us up on a practical takeaway. Like what can if you leveraged everything you know from your CAE days plus what you've learned since and kind of honing your coaching skills, like give us something that we can give us a coachable moment. I think that was a big term years ago. I know they talked about it on, I think Sports Center a while. It's like, oh, we got these coachable. That's a coachable moment. And it became kind of almost this meme within sports. But what's a coachable moment for us?
Well, let me give you the coachable moment, and then maybe a little bit of a backstory behind it, and
Yep.
if I get too long, then stop me certainly. But I think the coachable moment is eliminate the use of why questions when you are trying to evoke or elicit a reflective answer from somebody.
Okay.
So let that settle for a second. Eliminate why questions when you're trying to evoke a reflective answer from somebody.
So rather than me
And
following up saying, why should we do that? I'm going to say, what should we do with that?
what should we do? Or
Okay.
how did you come about that, plan?
Okay.
So, and I'll mix in a couple of examples, but So I went through coach training. I didn't just say, "Hey, I'm gonna be a coach." I got trained. I mean, I'm an audit professional, right? I have to know the process. I have to know how these things work, and I wanna do it well, I wanna do it right. So I got trained, but one of the things about the training was, don't ask why questions, because they are not healthful. They elicit a need. Sometimes they elicit, negativity from somebody because they feel like they're having to be defensive, if you get asked why. Also, sometimes if asked why, you feel like you have to explain. It basically means, please explain to me, right?
Yeah.
You think about why, it means, please explain. Well, that's not always helpful in a reflective kind of conversation. Those things are not good from this reflection idea. So what is this reflection idea? This reflection idea means if you're trying to have somebody deepen their own awareness about themselves or think about a solution themselves or go about trying to discover for themselves a new answer or a new insight, people have so much within themselves that they don't even know they have. And a lot of times, eliciting with a what or a how question is a much better way to go. And I wish I had known this. So you talk about, I wish I had known this 25 years ago. You know, I've always been a student of awareness and self awareness and learning and growth and development. But, I wish I had kind of known this nugget. And, a good example, I think, is maybe, uh, let's just say auditor comes to you and says, "Hey, getting ready to go talk to senior management. Um, I'm not really feeling, great about this, a little nervous." Instead of saying, "Hey, why are you nervous?" Why don't you say, "What's driving the nervousness for you?" And so you automatically are not in this defensive mode. You're more in a in a sense of trying to discover for yourself, "Hey, what is driving that for me?" And then when you have that answer, then you can go on and talk about maybe solutions for that or ways to approach that. So it just disarms by not doing the why. And so that, to me, that's extremely powerful.
Like, as you were talking through that, there a couple things came to mind. One, my analytical brain, when someone asks me why, just starts to go into a panic a little bit. I mean, depending on, the nature of the or what the question's about, why'd you run the red light? I wasn't paying attention. Whatever, but there's deeper questions where if it's a why, my brain just immediately goes into anxiety mode and it's just like, let me find the perfect answer. I don't exactly know why. And it ends up being probably doing more harm than good. And I know when, for my public accounting days, we did this strength finders assessment. You familiar with that?
Yeah.
Okay. And it's free now. So if anyone's interested, you can just search for strength finders. There's some website you can do it. It takes 20-25 minutes. It's really interesting. The results are. And so anyway, from this, I think there was like 25 of us on the team. We all took it and then we kind of compared what our top 5 strengths were. And it had to, I know every person in that room had analytical in their top 5, and most had analytical as their number 1. And obviously there's a strength to that. And the thing with having, a strength is there's the downside of that typical, I'm a perfectionist. That's my strength, which leads to I don't get work done because it has to be perfect. Example that a lot of people are familiar with. But so all that to say, I have to imagine there are a lot of, especially auditors, analytical, who, when they get asked why, maybe there's some anxiety there. Maybe it is difficult to answer. And so, if nothing else, I mean, we're what, I don't know, a couple minutes into this, and we already have this is like a practical write this down, take a note, stop asking why questions, start asking more what and hows.
And I think especially in the context of eliciting reflection from the other person.
And
And
I
so
wanted you to hit on that again, the reflection piece, because I know you did. You said reflective questioning or scenarios, and I went, well, okay, what does that mean? Can we get an
well,
example?
yeah, here's
And
the
you
way I
did.
think about it. Yeah, I think about, if I'm a leader or just a peer and you're interacting with somebody, I sort of think about if I'm helping the other person in some way. A lot of people ask questions, interact. This is not, what'd you do on the weekend? This is, how can I be better? What can I do? I've got a problem I'm trying to solve. So many times, Trent, come people come to us, especially us leaders, and say, "Hey, I've got this problem," and we want to jump right in and solve the problem for them, or we want to maybe ask them a question, but a lot of times those questions start with why. So those are there's like a spectrum there that we can teach. We can choose to teach. Okay, well, I hear you. I hear you're struggling with public speaking. Let me tell you two or three things that might work, or you might want to try. What have you tried? Whatever. So that's sort of teaching, mentoring. What's worked, what hasn't worked for you. But the coach skill is let's elicit from them what might be behind that. So, what obstacles are getting in your way? What might, you know, good look like for you? What could be a solution you haven't tried? What could be a better, more helpful way of thinking about this for you? How could you, so what or how could you reframe this for yourself in a way that's more positive? So that is what I mean by reflection. It's
Yeah.
getting the other person to think and say something reflective back. It's like seeing themselves in the mirror. What would they say to
Got it.
themselves?
Okay. And I feel like, again, if there's the over analytical person, they're going, well, I don't know when to use the what and the how, even after hearing that. I don't want to use it in the wrong. Just ask it.
Just ask
Eventually, you'll
it.
figure
Just
out the situations where one's
this
better
is
than the
so
other.
powerful. This is so powerful. I would say just try it.
Perfect.
You will be so surprised. And it was funny. Can I tell a quick story?
Yeah, of course.
Um, I spoke about this somewhere recently, and somebody from the audience came up to me the next day and said, "You know what? I heard you on that whole apply thing, Dale, and you know what? I went home yesterday and had the best conversation with my 11-year-old that I've ever had
Yeah.
because they reframed it from why, i.e., defensive child, right, to what, and then that engages, and it's powerful.
All right. We'll wrap this up with my 6-year-old. We couldn't find his shoes the other day, and so we just threw on something else. He went to school. We looked all over the house. They were in the hamper, the laundry hamper, and so immediately we saw him. We're like, dude, why did you put them in there? And so I lesson learned. We will definitely rephrase that. The answer was he wasn't paying attention to what we said, and just robot style took his shoes when we said put them away and put them in the hamper. But anyway, okay. Um, so one of the goals of this retired CAE series is to try to get a peek behind the curtain to the extent that we can, understanding still the potential sensitivity of the situation. And so the way we've been doing that is asking guests if a new CAE asked you for a politics lesson that maybe you have or have not put on the record while you're on the job, what story would you tell them? And if you can't have a specific one, that's totally fine. But just take that question how you feel comfortable answering it.
Yeah, as I think about the word politics, and over my career, I've heard that word used, um, and I think it often elicits negativity.
Uh-huh.
Politics is negative. Um, I really, honestly, never had politics running through my brain as a word, and it was not a mindset that I had, and it was not the way I processed, honestly. So I tried to be very purpose driven and always remembering who the ultimate, receiver of assurance information is and who has that need. And there are politics is influence. There are lots of influences as a chief auditor. And, it's fine to listen to those. It's important to listen to those influences. It's important to recognize those pressures. I think it's also important to question sometimes what's the motivating factor or what's behind. Let's use a what question. What's behind,
Hmm.
that particular politics or influence. But I think from an audit perspective, especially in the role, um, I hate to say rising above, but not engaging in that political banter or
Got it.
political back and forth um, is helpful because I don't believe that it really helps to achieve your ultimate purpose as the audit leader. And you can certainly deal with facts, help address people's concerns, help to listen to give them the perspective that you might have. But I think remaining objective and remaining true to that's really, really important.
Do you feel like that, because you mentioned being objective, we always talk about being objective. Do you feel like that's part of it? Part of the reasoning behind it is like we were almost raised to be objective.
We as humans or we
We
as
as
auditors?
auditors, independence, objectivity. We always talk about that. So is it almost like you didn't think politics because of independence, objectivity, or is it?
Yeah, I think that's spot on, actually. If I think about values, I talk about values a lot and think about values a lot and coach with values. And, I think one of my personal values is objectivity, just trying to be as independently minded for myself as I can be. And whatever the conversation, and the fact that I found a career that sort of played into that was nice because when you have that value alignment, you get fulfillment. And so, yeah, I think you're spot on with that idea, Trent. Was that objectivity trumped, politics, if you will.
One of the things that you said that I thought was super interesting, and I knew I was going to ask you about it immediately when you said it, when we were talking kind of off air, is you said that you were not literally, so not if you go check out Dell's LinkedIn, it's not going to say Chief Innovation Officer on there. But you said, yes, I was the Chief Executive Officer, I was the CAE, and then I was also the Chief Innovation Officer. And I kind of put that in quotes. What did you mean by that? How did you become that? And is it just, and I'm sure it's not, it wants to be a terrible question if you're just like, yeah, that's all. No. Is it, but it's not just like, oh, we always had the best and latest tech. Look at us, we're innovating, right?
No, 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 no. So I would never say that any audit shop that I led was on the cutting edge of technology. I would say we were a lot of times fast followers, or we certainly wanted to keep our eyes towards better from a technology perspective. And we did a lot of structural things and tool things and training things to move us ahead from that regard. I'm really excited about what's happened in the last 2 or 3 years with that. But when I made that comment to you, I was thinking more about the role. If the role of the leader is not to be the innovation driver, then who is? And so I always thought that this mindset of we have to always be better and we need to challenge ourselves to always be better and always trying to instill that in our teams. So this forward thinking, I'm not just myopically focused on, today or tomorrow or getting the audit plan done necessarily. I am very focused on even further out and driving us towards better. And so that's what I meant when I was talking about that. And I used to do things like say, "Hey, I have this vision for, or this future idea that every auditor would have a bot." We called it the bot for every auditor. I mean, wow. So what? And when that was 5 years ago. And here we are today, and perhaps that is where we are or where we're headed. But that was just a concept and a way of just getting people excited about change and doing things differently and thinking about the future differently. And we tried to work towards things like that, but it's more of a concept in a lot of ways. I also think that innovation leader, my job was not to say, here's the tool you need to use and here's how you need to use it. It was to help build into the systems and processes that we had permission to try. I think, auditors are perfectionists. Everything I say about an auditor, Trent, I am one. I have been one my entire career. So I am included in everything I say. Okay. So I think auditors, we, um, we want to process, we want to plan, we want to follow it, and we want to get 100 on the test at the end. We're perfectionists driven individuals, and that helps in a lot of ways, and it can get in your way sometimes. But so I think building into your processes the expectation of innovation and change and trying something different is really important. So having steps in the actual audit process to do that was important because I think that gives permission to
Okay.
test and learn, to try.
That's what how did you do that? That's what I was super interested in, and when you said always be better, I was curious about the process in general. I'm sure you led with that mindset. I was gonna ask if it was part of your vision or mission statement. You mentioned you had this vision, so maybe that was, included in there and, like, literally typed out, or written out, but what was that process if
Yeah,
you're
it was literally written out. It was literally in the audit process that there was a step to consider the use of innovative ideas, different types of testing, advanced analytics, we would call it, in that moment. We had a center of excellence, as many people did, and I know it's more towards, using, what is it called now? Crowdsourcing? Help me
Mhm.
here. Uh, putting the tools in the hands of the auditors ultimately is
Yep.
the better idea. It's what you do. That's the better idea. But in that moment, we had a center of excellence. So it's intentionally engaging the center of excellence in the audit processes to help design and look for ways that we should, look for better ways and should design tests and not what could be done. Find that was always the thing too. Oh, we can do this. Yeah, but what should we do? And it's really important to say what is the best and highest use for analytics or advanced analytics in this particular case. So designing that in with consultation from the center of excellence was really important. The permission stuff was really important, and I think measurement was really important as well. We had an innovation council, which included all of our senior leaders and some of the teams and representatives, and measures for analytics, scorecard kind of thing. Where in our time we had things like the percentage of advanced analytics done on engagement, or the percentage, in an audit plan, or percentage of findings, that were driven by analytics in some way, or just all designing those in a way that's germane to your practice is really important. But having something, I think, is what's more important that you can hold people accountable to and that keeps people focused on what that ultimate goal is super, super important.
I think if I put it in put it throughout the process of an audit and, like, literally stuck it in the documentation, uh, my statement would be, after hearing what you said, would be, if you're bored at this point, do something different. Like, do the thing differently. You know what I mean? Like, if you're tired of writing these memos or tired of writing these reports, find a way to do it differently. You have permission, go try it, and then let's see if how it worked out. So that's where I feel like a lot of innovation comes from, or changes, improvements in processes, in my brain also, is after I do something a handful of times, just like, this is boring. I've done it the same way so many times. I have to do something different here. And so maybe that would work for others. I think Bill Gates had some quote about being like, the people who are bored are the most effective with innovation or creativity or something like that. Assuming they actually execute on it. But
Yeah, if you see it as, I need to do something different here because I'm bored,
yeah,
then that's going to potentially bring about change and thinking about it differently. Also, think it's not always technology.
Mhm.
It can be just thinking about a different way of going about doing the work. I think about that a lot in the governance and risk management space where there's not a lot of data necessarily, but there's different ways to approach I used to call it the assurance problem.
Mhm.
What is the assurance problem we're trying to solve for here? And we can think about that in a different way. And often you do that by having collaborative brainstorming with your
Yeah.
teams. You know,
Let's say, looking back, and I know you're not like retired, but you are retired from the CAE side. If you're going to write a book about your career from whatever perspective you want to take it from, what would that first chapter be about?
I think the first chapter would be um, recognizing from the beginning of my career the importance of leadership and leadership development. So focused very early in my career and you know, in an auditor's career, on the technical skills. Super important. Don't take anything away from that. You have to have them. You have to be trained in audit processes and technologies, but there's so much focus on that. And, and true across a lot of disciplines, and less focus on some of the, call it softer, but just leadership development work that can take place and should take place early in a career and be built upon. Because I think, honestly, we're all leaders at all levels. If you influence, then you lead. And we can begin to build relationships, and that's a key part of leadership. We can focus on our communication skills, key part of leadership. We can, start thinking about how do we think strategically early in our careers to kind of see that future out there, and what are some, but getting in the habit and the muscle memory of that earlier is important. And so I think there's a number of things that we collectively can do to focus more on leadership. So I think that would be the first chapter. It's just recognizing that early and being a student of leadership. I think early in their career is important. We promote good auditors a lot of times, Trent, and with good auditors, great auditors with leadership potential, and then we say good luck.
Well, to that, I don't want to leave people with a good luck on like, okay, go do leadership training. All right, everybody, good luck. Because I feel like within leadership, there's a lot of aspects within that, and so probably some of the two overarching themes we've heard from CAEs, retired or otherwise, is relationships and communication. Those two things, and so you can take definitely communications training. But if you were to, and obviously this is not going to be perfect for everyone. Like this is the path. Literally anybody can just kind of jump in that path and that's going to be perfect for them. It would need to be kind of customized. But when you say leadership training, if someone was to search for like leadership training, is that what you're suggesting? Or is it understand more the aspects like how to build and maintain relationships? Okay, like that's an aspect of leadership training. Start there. How to effectively communicate, written, oral, otherwise, public speaking, maybe start there. Is there some kind of path? And again, knowing that it can't be that prescriptive of everyone do this, but maybe just go into a little bit more detail, even on what you mean by leadership training.
Yeah, I think that I think the leaderships. Let's just put it in two buckets, maybe, Trent. There's leadership know-how skills, strategic planning, capacity plan. Just thinking about the sort of the how do I do leadership things?
Got it.
That's kind of one category. And then the other category is how do I show up as a leader? And when I think about how I show up as a leader, it's my leadership style. It is, what do I want to be? How do I need to align with that leadership style? And how do I grow into that leadership style and now and into the future? So if I wanted to be a leader that is very consistent, or that is highly collaborative, or that champions, causes for people, that is how I want to show up as a leader. And I think knowing how you want to show up as a leader early in your career, you can begin to put together, and with your own awareness and talking to your leaders about this, the types of opportunities to help strengthen those skills for you and to strengthen that development for you. So it's not so much the, what you might learn in MBA school, or,
Yeah.
it's more about how you want to show up as a leader and how you want to be as a leader and what kind of leader you want to be. Write that down. Think about that. Design it and align it to who you are as an individual, what your values are. And those values are your anchors for that leadership. And as you recognize that early on, then you can build on that over time, and then you start being recognized for that, building your brand, if you will. They're a great leader because, and people
Yeah.
can see it in you. So
Okay.
does that address your question?
Yeah, I like that. And even the point, or the maybe something to do with that is I'm the type of leader who, and like fill in the blank, and then that's who, like that's what you want to be, and so then that's what you work to become, or I want to be seen as, and then cool, that's who I want to be seen as. That's who I will start to work towards becoming that leader.
Yeah, I often refer to it as your aspirational leadership style,
Got it.
because we all, I think, are aspiring to that in some way, and always have that in motion.
Okay. Excellent. What about the last chapter in that book? What's it going to be about?
Probably about integrity and just especially in the audit role, but in any role, never sacrifice your integrity. And I am talking about ethics and the ethical, but that to me is foundational. It's bedrock for that. But when I think about this, I'm thinking about um, how the integrity of your decisioning, the consistency of your decisioning, the respect you pay to other people, the care you exhibit with other people. And I think all those things from an integrity perspective, do people see you as a leader with integrity, dignity, respect, how you treat other people? I think all those things. And and when I say consistency, I'm really focused on kind of like fairness and application of a rule or of a guidance or of a guideline. Don't treat people different, for the things that need to be held consistent. And I think because that gets leaders in a lot of trouble, and it causes people to question your integrity. Like, why do they do that? And I think a lot of leaders miss that consistency piece.
So, if nothing else, I have ask what and how, never why. And even as we were talking, there at some point I forgot what the question was or what you said, but in my head I was like, okay, why though? And then as soon as I said it in my head, I was like, I can't, I gotta, and I like kind of struggled. I was like, I don't know what the what and the how is on this. So unfortunately, you did answer it, so I didn't have to embarrass myself with that. But I guess that apparently does take a little bit of practice. So anyway, I love that. I've got that as a takeaway for me, amongst a few other things. But is there any other takeaways? Anything else you want to leave the audience with?
I think about, you asked me about first chapter of the book and leadership. As I think about leadership, as I think about the work that I've been doing now since I retired, which is, leadership development coaching work, I think a lot about the importance of self-awareness. And so if I want to leave everybody with something, it is, think about self-awareness and and use your own self-awareness as a way to get better, grow yourself, and become a better person, a better human, a better leader, a better professional, a better whatever. And so I think that self-awareness is just truly important. I do a lot of reading now and Harvard Business Review articles and books, and LinkedIn is full of top 10 lists. And it seems like the most, in any top 10 list of leadership, self awareness is always there, and it's usually towards the top. And why is that? I think it's because self aware leaders are better leaders because they obviously know themselves, but they know their values, they know their strengths, they know their limitations, they know what's important to them. They know, what they expect of others. They know how to set those expectations in a way that is helpful and productive and meaningful. So I think the self-awareness idea is really important. So the advice, I would give you and to our audience is, to be intentional about that, to go discover something new about yourself, in whatever way it is, and whether it's a strength you can lean more into and leverage, to a greater extent, whether it's a limitation or a weakness, however you want to say it, it's something you could get better at. Whether it's something you have a belief about that's holding you back, is there a way to reframe that belief in a way that's more helpful? And a belief, simply, a belief could be something as simple as, I want to reframe how I view diet and exercise because to me, I don't think it's that important. How can I reframe that in a way that's more productive? And can I use that to, as a motivational thing for me. So the whole idea of beliefs impact, what you do and what the outcomes are. Is really impactful. So examining those beliefs, especially the ones that I would call self-limiting, are important. So just get better. But if you focus on self-awareness, if you focus on that, with a little bit of incremental improvements, you focus on the things that I've talked about here a little bit and go discover for yourself and be a student of yourself in that regard. It's just an easy, simple, cheap, and highly, highly, highly effective way to focus on your own development. And if you need help, talk to somebody that can help you. If talk to a leader, talk to a friend, talk to a peer. If you want to talk to me, you can find me online. And I just think owning that is the best advice I could leave our audience today.
Hey everyone, thank you very much for listening to this episode of the Audit Podcast. Whatever platform you're listening on right now, I'm sure there's a subscribe button somewhere, so please hit the subscribe button there. If you're listening through iTunes or Spotify, feel free to go give us that 5-star rating. It only took me about 16 seconds to give myself a 5-star review, and it really helps to get future guests to come on the show, so we'd really appreciate that. Lastly, be sure to check out the show notes and follow us on all our social media channels on Instagram, on LinkedIn, and on TikTok. Also, if interested, please sign up for our weekly newsletter from the Audit Podcast. Thank you all. Have a great one.